yes, tissue damage can cause pain, but also if your nervous system is stuck in overdrive, that can also cause pain. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. So you can have an injury and it can stimulate the nervous system to create pain signals. But even after the tissue is healed, you can still get those pain signals going to the brain. There's no tissue damage, but there's still pain. Doesn't mean the pain's not real, just means the tissues are no longer damaged and that nervous system is being overstimulated. And there's multiple things that can cause the overstimulation.
So, Leigh, we're going to be talking about chronic pain because your podcast is all about chronic pain. Your practice is all about chronic pain. First of all, just give people a little introduction into who you are and how you came to, focus on chronic pain for your clients.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been in wellness for 29 years now, so it'll be 30 years next June. So no doubt I have some kind of celebration for that. But I've worked across multiple different genres, if you like. I've trained in so many different areas, but I started off as a personal trainer back in my mid-20s, in the mid-1990s. And I was in a gym one day working with this client in a place called Cheshunt, which I'm sure you know.
I know
It's not too far
Cheshunt.
from where we both grew up.
Yeah.
Um, and the lady I was training, she was doing a lat pull down exercise. And as she pulled the bar down, she kind of screamed and like let the weights go. And obviously with lat pull down, the weights come down and bang, and they make a load of noise. But she was holding her shoulder, go, oh, I've hurt my shoulder, I've hurt my shoulder. And I thought, oh God, what's just happened here? So I was relatively new into my career, like 2 years in. And I thought, what just happened? I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know why she was in pain. And that made me feel anxious that I didn't know. And it made me feel like completely inadequate. Like, it's my job. I should know,
Mm.
right? Yeah, was it my fault? Was it something I was doing? Or did these things just happen and it's not really my fault? I didn't know, right? Either way, it made me feel bad, especially because I had studied with what was then the gold standard certification. It was, the American College of Sports Medicine. I studied really, really hard. And I actually did really well in my exams, I remember. And I remember thinking, but that's not enough, and that moment just really stuck with me. And what that did, that really, I guess, pushed me, inspired me to learn more. I mean, I've always been someone that loves to learn anyway, but this pushed me even more. So, I started to look into biomechanics and pain science and nutrition, nervous system work. And it was shortly after, it was a couple of years actually, after that incident in the gym, that a guy called Paul Chek started teaching courses in the UK. And I'd been following his work for 5 or 6 years by that point. And so as soon as his courses came to the UK, I thought, wow, I've got to jump on board and do his courses. But then I looked at how much they cost and I thought, oh, maybe not, right?
They are expensive, aren't they? But
They are
yeah,
expensive.
they are.
You
But
pay for
worth
what you
it.
get.
Yes, you pay for what
Right?
you get.
And so I started on my journey, studying with the Chek Institute, which ended up taking me 5.5 years. I've also studied functional diagnostic nutrition and manual therapy skills and things like that as well. But during my Chek training, so towards the end of the first year of my Chek training, or just after that actually, I think yeah, just after my first year of training, I remember I was working with a lady. So her name was Caroline. Now she came to the health club I was working at the time, and I remember it was the club manager that sold her the membership. And me and him worked really well together. We got on really well. And he said to this lady, look, I'm going to let you join the club, but because you've got a serious lower back issue, I'm only going to let you join if you also work with our leading trainer because he specializes in lower back pain. And she's like, oh, that sounds like a really good idea. Yeah, I'll happily do that. So this lady, her name was Caroline. It's really stuck with me. I remember her name. She was a professional dancer. She was in her 40s, but she couldn't she couldn't work because of the back pain.
Such a shame.
So not only was it stopping her from earning a living, it was also destroying her soul because that's what she loved to do. She loved to dance. That was her passion, right? So she was quite depressed. She was doing office work, which she didn't really like doing. Like she worked as a temp. And also she couldn't work full time because of the pain. So she was just, depressed. She wasn't being able to follow her passion. She wasn't earning much money. So she was in a really bad way, and of course, it's not nice to be in pain either, right? That affects so many different areas of your life. But for her, the main thing was stopping her from doing her passion, which was dancing. So when she came to see me, I did what I was trained to do with the Chek Institute. I did like a very detailed biomechanical postural assessment with her and worked out which joints in her body were immobile, which muscles were excessively tight, and which muscles were weak. So what I did was I created an exercise program for her that basically improved her posture, her biomechanics. It took stress off of certain parts of her body. And about 4 weeks into working with her with a corrective exercise program, she disappeared. And that worried me. I thought, oh no, what's happened? And I remember I tried to contact her, I couldn't get through to her, which just made me even more worried. And I thought, oh no, what's happened? And after trying a few times to get hold of her, I spoke to one of the office staff and said, look, could you try and get hold of Caroline? See how she is, why isn't she coming in? Like, I hadn't heard from her. So they said, yeah, leave it with us. We'll follow up. So of course I've got my other clients and I kind of forget about it for a little while. And a few weeks later, I can't remember exactly how much later it was, that office staff member came to see me on the gym floor and they said, oh, I've just spoken to Caroline. And I'm like, oh, how is she? And he was like, she's amazing. She's away on a dance tour. And I was like,
Wow.
what?
You must have been so relieved. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I mean, I was surprised as well
Mm.
because I couldn't believe that. I mean, if she'd have come to me and she'd have said, am I ready to go on a dance tour? I would have said no, because there was so much more work I could have done with her, right? But the person from the office said she wanted me to tell you how much she thanks you for getting her back, being able to dance again, you know? And so that was just such a powerful moment for me, seeing someone reclaim their life, right?
Yeah.
Because that is often what it's like when you're in pain. It takes your life away from you.
Yeah.
You're living a life that you don't want to lead, right? So I think it was Spider-Man that said, with great knowledge comes great responsibility. Did he say something like that?
That sounds like something. Yeah,
Something along those lines, right?
that's definitely a line. I'm not
Yeah,
sure where it's from though.
it's definitely Spider-Man, but I'm not sure I got the wording exactly right. But you get the message.
Yeah.
But that filled me with so much satisfaction,
Mm.
and it's almost like, okay, I want to do more of that. I want to do more of helping people.
Mm.
And since then, so that was about 23, 24 years ago, I've helped many, many others do that, hundreds of people. And also, I also healed my own herniated discs
You
that
did.
happened to me 12 years ago, right?
And I remember that
It
journey, like you documented that journey. And I remember you claim, like actually saying that you'd fix your own back and using your own knowledge, like the stuff you
yeah.
use in your clients. I was like, wow, to be able to actually fix your own back, like, because it's such a complex thing to do, that the fact that you managed to do it on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long process. So it was about I think it was 22 months, if I remember right. And, you know, the reason that is because the discs have a very little or almost no blood supply.
Mm.
So they do take a long time to heal. But, you know, many years later, you know, I'm playing tennis, quite intensive. I'm lifting really heavy weights again. You know, this time of year, I'm actually not playing tennis because it's a bit too cold for me.
Mm.
Not the weather's cold. I don't like the way the ball travels in the cold. It's very different. It goes very
Yeah, like
slow.
wind and rain and things. But
Yeah, and the ball
how
gets big and fluffy and it's heavy and yeah, I
oh,
just don't like it. And also it gives my body a chance to rest.
mm,
It also gives my body a chance to do a different type of exercise. So I lift heavy in the winter.
mm.
You know, I build up a lot of strength, and then when tennis season is back, I train a lot lighter and fewer.
How do you know when you have chronic pain? Because, for example, with your back pain, how did you know that this was a serious issue? Because sometimes people get pain and then they work through it and then it goes away. But then how do you know when you've
Yeah.
got a problem that you need to work on?
Well, chronic just means time,
Mm,
right? So chronic pain means generally you've had pain for more than 12 weeks,
12
right?
weeks. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean most lower back issues solve themselves within 4 weeks.
Right. That's what I'm
Most of
hoping
them.
because I have that problem at the moment and I haven't been able to
Right.
go to the gym for the
Right.
last week.
Okay.
I've been pushing through it for the last month.
Yeah.
But this week I've given up. I'm just like, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna rest. Yeah,
Yeah. Pushing through it is
never good.
never normally the
So
right
if you have a
the
niggle, don't push through, basically.
yeah,
That's
I
your
mean,
advice.
yeah, I mean, I would say any symptom, pain or otherwise, try to understand what your body's trying to tell you.
Hmm. What do you think people most misunderstand about chronic pain and its root causes?
Uh, I mean, most, I think the most misunderstood thing is that people think that pain equals tissue damage, right?
Right, that's what I would have thought.
And sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. I would say it is the biggest misunderstanding. But the way that I look at pain is to look at it from three different points of view. To make it simple, I mean it's more than four, but I want to make it easy to understand.
Mhm.
So what I would say is that you know a lot of people are conditioned to seek instant relief, right? So they'll reach for pills or anti-inflammatories instead of addressing the root cause. Like when I went to the GP to get an MRI when I had my back injury, you know, he prescribed me painkillers and anti-inflammatories. And I tried to explain to him I was never going to use them. And he thought I was mad, right? Um, but I didn't, I left the prescription in his office, right? I put it in his waste paper bin because I was never going to use them
Yeah.
because pain is a signal, it's a communication. So if I was moving into a position that made my pain worse, I knew not to move into that position,
But if the
right?
pain wasn't there, you'd be moving into that position and not feeling
Yes.
it.
Which would have made my recovery much longer, or possibly might have led me to the point where I might have needed surgery. Right?
Good
It was a
point.
pretty bad herniation, right? You know, I've seen quite a few MRIs of herniations, and mine's right up there with the worst I've seen.
Which is
But
shocking because you know how to train.
that's true. But I was looking back, I was doing a number of things that I shouldn't have been doing, which I know sounds like, you know, I'm not practicing what I preach, and there was a certain amount of truth in that. But I was writing a book at the time called the
Mm.
Tennis Biomechanics Manual, and I had a deadline to meet. So I was spending about 18 hours a day sat on a chair. I was also doing Bikram yoga, which makes you stretch through ranges of motion that probably aren't natural for you. So I think
Mm.
that played a role as well. And I think just the fact that I was working just really long hours,
All right.
so my body wasn't recovering. And obviously, sitting is a really bad position for your lower back as well.
Mm.
And going through that experience was one of the best learning experiences I've ever had. First of all, it made me focus on making sure that I never allow myself to go into that situation again, regardless of what project I'm working on.
Mm.
Right. And the other major learning was um, all the training that I'd had didn't prepare me to understand what it's like for a client to go through that. Simple things like putting your underwear on, putting socks on. How do you sit in a chair? Because it took me 4 weeks to be able to sit after that
God.
injury.
Oh my gosh.
So I'd be commuting, into London on a train, and I'd have to take a lumbar roll with me, otherwise I couldn't sit down. But I wanted to sit down because the pain was making me tired, right?
Mm.
So all those things that I learned just made me a much better practitioner, right? Yes, I would have rather have not gone through that experience and would rather have, played tennis for those 2 years that I couldn't play. But I did get a lot from it as well, and I can use that information to help others now, right? It's what we call the hero's journey, right?
Right, right.
So, the other thing as well, and it's because of their training, I'm not bashing anyone, but doctors don't have the time or the resources to go deeper,
Mm.
right? So oftentimes people in pain feel dismissed or they feel gaslit because it's like, oh, you're in pain, I'll take this, right? That's pretty much it. Or they'll say, well, I don't know what's wrong with you, therefore it must all be in your head.
Mm. And then also the people that do visit the doctors, they do just want that relief. Like
Yeah,
so the doctors are giving people what they want as
yeah,
well. So it's kind of both sides win.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, win maybe in the short term,
In the
but
short
definitely not
term.
in the long term.
Mm.
Right? So in terms of, yes, tissue damage can cause pain, but also if your nervous system is stuck in overdrive, that can also cause pain. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize. So you can have an injury and it can stimulate the nervous system to create pain signals. But even after the tissue is healed, you can still get those pain signals going to the brain. There's no tissue damage, but there's still pain. Doesn't mean the pain's not real, just means the tissues are no longer damaged and that nervous system is being overstimulated. And there's multiple things that can cause the overstimulation, which,
Yeah.
which I'm sure we're going to come on to. So just getting back to what I was saying, so I look at pain, to make it simple, in three different areas in terms of what causes pain. The first one is structural. So if you think of the human body like a bicycle wheel, so in a bicycle wheel, you've got spokes.
Mm.
Now, if some of the spokes are too tight or too loose, the wheel is going to wobble. It's not going to be straight. And it's the same with our bodies. If we've got muscles that are too tight, muscles that are too loose or too weak, it's going to mean that our body is out of alignment. That's going to put excessive stress on tissues that are not designed to take that excessive stress. So you're more likely to cause damage and pain. So what I tend to do, as I've kind of mentioned with that lady Caroline, I found out which joints were immobile, taught her how to mobilize them, found out which muscles were tight, taught her how to stretch them, found which muscles were weak, gave her specific exercises to strengthen them. With a bicycle wheel, if you took it to a bicycle mechanic, he would find whichever spokes are too loose and tighten them, and find the spokes that are too tight and would loosen them. And now you've got your nice, straight, true round wheel, right? So an example of someone I helped pretty much just doing that was a guy called Billy.
Mm.
And Billy was a rugby player, and he had groin pain and kind of hip flexor pain for about 3 years before he came to see me. And what I did was he basically said to me, look, I've got 8 weeks until pre-season starts. This is my issue. Can you help me? And I said, look, we've got 8 weeks. I can do all I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And 8 weeks isn't long. So anyway, I assessed him. I gave him a corrective exercise program. He did that for 4 weeks. I got him back in. I reassessed him, and his posture was improving. But now I'm thinking, well, he's only got 4 weeks until his pre-season starts. And I said to him, what are you going to be doing in your pre-season? He said, well, we're going to be doing lots of sprints. We're going to be doing shuttle runs. He said, we're going to be tackling bags. He said, not tackling people, but tackling the bags as they do in their training. And I thought, well, he's going to have to be able to survive that. So I need to condition him to survive that whilst continuing to improve his posture and his core stability.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave him a second program, and there was for me, there was some risk involved because I wasn't sure he was ready for more intense exercise. But I thought, well, if he's going to be doing that kind of training, I haven't really got a choice.
Yeah.
But what I was hoping was that my program wasn't going to re-injure him, right? So, I had to make, if you like, an educated, not guess, but I had to try and get that
Strike some sort of balance.
level of intensity enough so that he wasn't going to break down when he started training, but not too much so that he would break down from the training.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he did that program for 4 weeks, and then I didn't see him after that. And then at the end of the season, he contacted me and basically told me he just had the best season he'd ever had. He didn't miss a minute of playing. His leg was like his groin, his hip flexor was completely fine. He said he was running faster, kicking further, bursting through tackles, changing direction quicker than ever.
Wow.
And I said, what'd you put it down to? And he said, well, what I was doing, he said, I would do 4 weeks of your first program, and then I'd switch it for the second program for 4 weeks. And I said, I just kept switching that throughout the season.
Nice.
And he said, his best season he's ever had. First season, I think he was ever pain free.
I take it the first program was like corrective exercise, so gentle,
Yeah.
strengthening and stretching muscles,
Yeah.
like the bicycle spoke. And then the second program was more high intensity. I mean, how do you deal with that with people? Because the corrective exercise part is the part that people find quite tedious
Mm-hmm.
because it's so slow and it is so
Mm.
like you've really got to hold yourself back from doing gym stuff in quotes, like
Mm.
working hard in the gym. How do you deal with that in clients? Is it just educating them and they're just fairly desperate to get rid of the pain anyway? It's a different
Yeah. So,
clientele, isn't it, for you?
yeah, I mean, it's a good question because I have had to deal with that situation with clients. But over the
Right.
years, one of the things that I've studied a lot as well is behavior, human behavior, and behavior change.
Mm.
And what I get really clear with anyone when I work with them, first off the bat is, okay, what do you want to achieve? And I get really specific, setting SMART goals. And I have a whole hour where we go through that.
Mm.
In fact, at the moment, when I'm working with clients, before we even get on to look at exercise or nutrition, they've probably done over 2 hours of this work with me
Mm.
because they've got to understand that the things that they're doing are the things that are going to enable them to get to their ultimate goal. So whilst, let's say someone finds the exercise I've given them boring because they're corrective,
Mm.
I would also say, yeah, but once you get to a certain level, that's when I'm going to change the program and make it more exciting.
Yeah.
So you're dangling the carrot, right? And listen, I've been through that myself as well. Like I've had shoulder injuries, I've had a knee injury, I've had my lower back injury. I find that stuff boring,
Yeah, it is.
right? If
It's
that's all you're doing,
yeah.
so I know what it's like. But when I was going through that, I kept thinking, right, this isn't forever. This is just till I get to the next stage, and then I'm going to up
And
it.
and the next stage, how do you know when it's time to go on to the next stage?
Well, it's different for everybody,
Okay. Yeah.
but it's a gradual progression. So in the check system that I use, we have phase 1, 2, and 3. So phase 1 is without spinal loading, so no compression of the spine.
Okay.
So if you've got a back
That's
injury,
squats out for me. Yep, go on.
yeah. Phase 2. So once you've kind of, you know, achieved a certain level of proficiency in those exercises, and it depends on the injury, because like again, discs, they can take a long time.
Mm.
But the next stage is where you start to prepare the body for what's called axial loading, right? The axial skeleton. So they might be partially, so you go from your spine being horizontal to maybe 45 degrees. And the exercises become a bit more complex. So phase one is a bit more isolated. So you might be working, let's say, the lumbar erectors on their own.
Hmm.
Um, so that's phase two. And then phase three is where you start to actually load and you start to do what we call primal pattern movements.
Mm.
So squatting, lunging, bending,
Lunging,
pushing, pulling,
bending.
twisting, and
Right,
running, walking.
right, right.
So it goes through that kind of progression. And sometimes it's not phase one, phase two, phase three in blocks. There's, I might start phase one, but I might have one phase two exercise in there right from the beginning.
Mm.
And then I might introduce another phase two exercise because they've got to a certain level in one of the phase one exercises. So it's not fixed
It's
in
not
stone.
fixed, yeah.
It's a concept, and you just got to use your common sense and just see how the client is responding to those particular exercises.
I would say, just coming on to me very quickly, I would say
Mm,
mine is definitely mechanical. Definitely
mm,
this one, like this first reason that you're saying for pain. Mine is definitely mechanical because I know I have a feeling I know what it is. Like my thoracic spine isn't very flexible these days. Like I've had kids and I sit a lot and I've been done the breastfeeding and all of the kids and holding. And then so my lower back has always gotten the brunt of things over the years. And then
mm,
I'm doing a lot of glute exercises these days, a lot of kind of hip extension. And I think maybe I'm putting too much into my back. It's definitely a mechanical thing for me because I know
mm.
what the other stages are that you're about to mention. Yeah. And so for me, the idea of not going into the gym really makes me kind of anxious. I'm just like, oh, I really want to get back in and do what I usually do, but I really need to pull back and to have some discipline like you did. You needed discipline to not play
Are
tennis.
you
And
are your symptoms just local to your back?
yes, yeah, just
That's a good thing.
local. Yeah.
That's a good thing. That means it's not too serious. Like, I couldn't feel my toes.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure people
my
listening
whole left leg
probably,
was numb.
I'm sure someone can relate to you. Someone's like, oh
Oh
God,
yeah,
that's me.
yeah. Dropped foot, so I couldn't barely walk. Had to drag my left leg along behind me.
Oh my gosh. So that's the first thing
Yeah,
that you put pain down to. So what's the second?
yeah. So the second main category is nutritional.
Mm,
So there are certain foods in our diet that can be quite inflammatory. So, seed oils is a big one.
mm,
Grains can often be one as well, particularly gluten-containing grains.
hmm.
Dairy can be quite inflammatory for people. Alcohol is inflammatory for everybody.
Yeah.
Um, Food sensitivities. So I'd include food allergies within that. Um, can increase your likelihood of pain. Toxins. So again, thinking of food, if your food isn't organic, it's been grown in toxic soil. So they
Hmm.
put petrochemicals in the soil, whether it's NPK fertilizer or it's some kind of herbicide. If you're eating grains, if you're eating things like bread, they often use glyphosate in the
Mm.
harvesting process, even if they don't use it in the growing process. Um, there's heavy metals in the soil. So if the food that you're eating was grown in soil that has high amounts of heavy metals, that's going to be in your body as well. So that can cause a lot of issues. And really any kind of, gastrointestinal problem is more likely to increase your chances of getting pain.
And when you say
Um,
increased chance of getting pain, do you mean pain anywhere? So it doesn't have to
yeah.
just be gut pain. So,
So it could be, so let's say I was actually talking to someone the other day. He cleans roofs, right? So he has a big pole and he's got a thing on the end of it and he washes roofs with it. and he was saying he's got arthritic fingers. And I was trying to explain to him it's probably not your job per se that's doing it. It's probably some degree of internal inflammation, but it's showing up in your hands because that's what you're using all the time.
Mm.
So, things like leaky gut is, again, I haven't assessed him in any way. I was just talking to him, but my, pardon the pun, gut feel would be that it's a gastrointestinal issue, but he's actually experiencing the pain in the hands.
Mm. That reminds me
Uh,
of the conversation that we had. We both had a guest, Sally Norton, when she talks about oxalates, so plant
yeah.
toxins, and how it can impact your knees, your joints, your gut, your skin. Like it can impact every part of you.
Mm.
And it just shows that if it's not just gut, like it's systemic, like it can leak into the rest of your body and access the places that like your weakest link, basically. So that the man that
Yeah,
you spoke
exactly
to,
that.
like that, his hands are probably his weakest link in that case
Yeah.
because they were just always working.
Yeah,
Um,
well, if you think about it, if he's using his hands all the time, where's the blood going to be going?
yeah,
It'll be going
yeah.
to his fingers, right? So if you've got, let's say it could be oxalates, it could be oxalates that's causing that pain, right? So what does she call oxalates? A toxic superfood.
Mm,
They're toxic. So, um, and again, there are other chemicals in food like that can cause pain as well. And it could be, again, it could be that there wasn't a tissue damage at some point, and the let's just call it toxic food for a moment. It could be maintaining that neural drive, creating the pain signal, even though the area is healed.
mm,
Or it could be there was no tissue damage at all, and just the fact that there's toxins in the gut and they're leaking into the bloodstream could create pain anywhere in the body.
mm.
Now, think of people that have got, you know, things like fibromyalgia or autoimmune conditions. That's what they are, right? So I've got one example of someone I worked with a few years back. So his name was Trail, and when he came to see me, he was like similar build to me, but he told me that he'd lost 17 kilos of muscle before he came to see me because he was finding it really difficult to eat because every time he swallowed, his throat would swell up, and then he
Mm.
would choke. So every time he went to eat something, it was frightening because imagine choking is not pleasant experience, right? Because you feel like you're going to
Right.
die.
Gosh.
So he ended up on a 100% liquid diet, and even swallowing liquids wasn't easy, but it was much better than when he had food. He also had pain in his sternum as well, which he'd been to see many doctors, and none of them seemed to know what that was. He did get a diagnosis of something called costochondritis,
Mm.
which is inflammation of the connective tissue in the rib cage
Hmm.
or the cartilage of the rib cage. But he was like, man, I don't think that's a accurate diagnosis. And one doctor said, I don't know what's going on, but what I think I should do is cut down your breastbone, open it up inside, and have a look to see if I can find anything.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
God, talk about
Which he was,
frightening.
which he was horrified to hear. So, some doctors just said, look, there's nothing wrong with you, which really means I can't find anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean there
Mm.
isn't anything wrong with a person. It just means they don't know. And sadly, some professionals' ego isn't strong enough to say, look, I don't know. Right? If I don't know something, I'll tell someone I don't know. And maybe point them in the direction of someone that might know, or I'll go away and research it to find out, right? Rather than say, oh, it's not really happening, you know. But ultimately, he knew something wasn't right. And when he spoke to me, he said, well, what do you think? Do you have an idea of what's going on? And I said, well, it happens when you eat, right? He said, yeah. And I said, well, you're reacting to a food that you're eating. That sounds pretty simple to me. And he said, do you think so? And I said, well, look, why don't we just run a blood test and see what we find? So he ran a blood test and it came back with a number of foods that he was sensitive to. So he cut those foods out just changed his diet a little bit. And within a week, he started to feel a bit better. And within a few weeks, he started to feel a lot better. And within a few months, he was back eating completely normally, although there was still some foods he was avoiding, but he was eating a good quantity of food. And I think it was about 6 months after I finished working with him. At the time I was working in central London, and he used to live about 120 miles away. But he happened to be in London one day, and he thought, "Oh, I'm just going to pop in and say hi to Leigh." So anyway, he came to where I was working at the time, and he knocks on the door, and I go and open the door, and I just say, "Can I help you?" And he's like, "Leigh, it's me, Trail." Right? I didn't recognize him because he'd put on so much
So much
muscle.
muscle.
I mean, he literally looked like a professional rugby player,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And I was just like, oh, I was gobsmacked. And he was so overjoyed with the results. Since then he's sent two family members to me to help them with issues that they were having as well, and that their issues are completely fine now.
Mm.
One of them was pain actually, so they had upper back shoulder pain, and they used to like play netball and
So that
do
was
CrossFit.
mechanical for them.
Yeah, well, there was a bit of everything.
But so if someone has a mechanical injury, could poor nutrition make the mechanical injury worse?
Yes, possibly, because again, what rebuilds your tissues is what you eat.
Yeah. And also if you're
And
inflamed from your diet, then that will cause pain,
yeah,
again
it's going to
in the
increase the pain.
injury. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you could give to someone to figure out what foods don't agree with them? So just say they don't have access to food sensitivity tests right now. I know you have some a pretty good tip about how to
Mm.
figure out what
I
foods
think you're
agree
I
and
think
what
you're talking
don't.
about the pulse test.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
does the
so
pulse test work like 100%? Or it's
I
hard
don't
to
know.
know.
I don't
Okay.
know if it's 100%. It's certainly an option.
It's a good starting point.
Yeah, so I say to my clients, look, there's two ways in which you can assess food sensitivities. They've both got their risks and their benefits, or their pros and their cons. With the blood test, the pro is that it's quick, and you get a black and white list of foods,
Hmm.
right? The downside is there's a financial expense to it.
Yeah.
With the pulse test, it's free. The downside to it, it can take quite a lot of time.
Okay.
You can because you've got to test multiple foods. It could take you weeks to go through the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
But you can start with the most obvious ones. But what you actually do, so let's say for most people, I'd probably say if you're eating bread, start with bread because it contains gluten. That's probably the most common irritant. So what you would do is you'd sit down, relax for 5 minutes, and then take your pulse for 60 seconds. What I used to advise people to do is to take their radial pulse, but I know some people find that difficult to do.
What's a radial pulse?
What's that?
What's the radial pulse? Oh, like on your
So
arm, you
that
mean?
yes, the one
Yeah.
nearest your thumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but some people find it difficult to do that. But nowadays, if you can buy an oximeter and it does your pulse for you, just stick it on the end of your finger.
Right.
Much easier way of doing it. And they're really, really cheap, like, a few pounds. Get it from like a pharmacy or something like that. So what you can do is wait 5 minutes, stick this on your finger, get your pulse. So that's like your control pulse, if you like. And then take a little bit of, let's say it's bread, pop it under your tongue. Don't chew it, don't swallow it, just hold it under your tongue. Time that for 60 seconds and then re-measure your pulse. So if it goes up or down by more than 4 beats per minute, that's suggesting that you are sensitive to that food.
So
So
I
then you
love
would need
that. That's
to
fascinating.
then you would eliminate that food. But when I don't like the word eliminate. I like the word replace.
Replace.
Because if you're taking something away, put something back in its place.
Hmm.
And but just be careful. You don't want it to be something that's very similar and maybe not necessarily something that you've not eaten for a long time, because then you're gonna have to test that. further down the line as well.
So putting
Um,
it under the tongue, how does that relate then to the pulse and the nervous system? Like, why do people say to put things under
so
your
that will get
tongue?
into your bloodstream,
Yeah.
right? So that will once it gets into your bloodstream, if there's an immune response, it's going to affect your heart rate
Okay.
because your immune cells within your blood vessels are going to start to activate, and
Mm,
that can affect your heart rate.
gosh. Okay. So I can see how that takes time because you've got to literally isolate ingredients to get a true reading of what is
Well,
actually causing the
what
problem.
you can also do, if you wanted to, is like if you had, I don't know, let's say you ate steak and kidney pies, right? You could put a bit of that under your tongue, but then you don't know, is it the steak, is it the kidney,
Mm,
is it the pastry? But what might enable you to do is to narrow it down to which foods you need to test on their own. But
right.
I don't know if I told you this last time, but when I moved to where I live now about 6 years ago, I used to eat a big breakfast, a big like meat, a little bit of vegetable kind of breakfast. And I thought, I want to change things up. And I thought, what did I used to eat years ago? And I thought, oh no, I used to eat like a big bowl of porridge, maybe like banana in it, honey, maybe some dried fruit. Well, I wouldn't have dried fruit now. Um, and a protein shake. And I thought, well, let me try something like that. So I started doing that. First of all, I felt really hungry afterwards because I wasn't eating the meat.
Mm,
Um, but I also, after a while, I thought I need a bit of more variety. So I started buying these different like organic granolas, and I'd have those, and I'd have a protein shake. And after I was eating these granolas, I was feeling nauseous, and I
mm.
was thinking my body's trying to tell me something here. So I thought, let me pulse test this granola. So I took my pulse. My pulse is normally around 42 to 45, my resting pulse. And I put this under my tongue and I measured it. So I waited a minute, I re-measured it, and my pulse was 95.
Oh my gosh. You like,
So
what more would you need?
no wonder I'm feeling nauseous, right? And I thought, well, let me test it again another day just to make sure. So I tested it again another day. I got pretty much exactly the same results. I thought, okay. So I thought,
Yeah.
right, I'm just going to stick to porridge. And then after eating porridge for a few months, I started getting knee pain in my left knee. And I thought, this is strange. And I didn't put two and two together until about 3 years later. And I still had this knee pain and I couldn't work out what it was. And then I just, not even related to my knee, I just said, you know, I'm going to stop eating this porridge. Within 3 weeks of stopping the porridge, my knee was completely fine. And because I had a really restricted range of motion, it was like I had osteoarthritis in my knee,
Wow.
right? And I could bend my knee to about 90 degrees, which is not a lot. So your knee should bend to about 135 degrees. So you should be able to get your heel onto your backside. But
Hmm.
I could only bend my knee to like 90 degrees. And after 3 weeks, all the pain had gone, all the swelling had gone in my knee, and I could get my heel and just pull it up to my backside like, like it was nothing.
Wow.
So, you know, that shows us
That shows
how
what you're trying to say.
much
This
of an
whole podcast is
effect
about that. Yeah.
nutrition can have on the body.
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes I feel, sometimes after I eat something, I can feel my body gets hot. I think that is a sign as well. Like, so sometimes it can be something innocent, like if I have some yogurt with some nuts and fruit and things, but then I'll feel hot afterwards. Like, just not even like just head and chest, like it'll just be my arms and my legs. Like, I'll just kind of feel hot in the body. I'd say that's a sign, isn't it?
Yeah.
I should
So
do
when you
pulse
think
test on that.
when you think our immune system is there to remove things that shouldn't be in the body, right?
Mm.
What does it do to achieve that? Well, it creates redness, heat, swelling, and sometimes pain.
Mm.
So it sounds to me like you're having an immune response to that food.
Yeah, I'm
So,
gonna
so
I'm so gonna get into this because I've been kind of ignoring it, thinking, oh, that's got to be a problem. But then I kind of just think, oh, it'll be fine though. But then it's not fine because over the years, what kind of issues is that particular food going to cause to
yeah,
someone's health?
you know who Novak Djokovic is, right?
Yeah, of
Tennis
course.
player,
Yes, yes.
legendary tennis player.
Yeah.
Well, prior to about 2010, even though he was one of the best players in the world, he, whenever it was a hot day, he had to quit. He couldn't handle the heat. He would just overheat, right? And he went to see a doctor in Serbia, where he's from, and the doctor ran some blood tests and found out that he was intolerant or sensitive to gluten and dairy. Now, Djokovic grew up in a pizza parlor. His parents ran a pizza parlor in Belgrade, right? Opposite a tennis court, of course. And so he'd grown up eating those foods all the time. And he was eating a lot of gluten and dairy. So he changed his diet to a gluten-free, dairy-free diet. And then from 2011 up till 2 years ago, he's pretty much the best player in the world. And he's still the third best player in the world now, even though he's 38.
Yeah, which is incredible. Like that he's still playing at his level at his age.
But it shows you that when you're eating a food that's causing an immune response, it causes your body to heat up.
Mm. That's why he couldn't play in the sun because it was just too much heat.
Yeah, because
Okay.
no other player was suffering from that.
Mm.
But he was clearly having a real severe response to those foods that he'd eaten all his life.
I'm gonna get onto this pulse test today. I'm gonna get onto that. What was the third? Because we've done one mechanical, second nutritional, third.
Yeah, so the third one I'd put under the banner of neurological, but it does potentially cover more than one area, but I'm just trying to keep it simple for people. And that is or that is where we need to realize that pain is actually an alarm system. So if you think of, if you're in your kitchen and you're cooking and you put your hand on the hob and the hob's turned on, right? Pain is going to tell you to lift your hand off quick, right? So pain is an alarm system. Now, if you had leprosy, lepers don't feel pain, right? Because their nerves have been damaged. If a leper puts their hand on a hot plate, they're not going to know that it's on a hot plate until they hear it burning,
Sizzling. Yeah.
or they smell the steam, or they see the steam, right? And that's why a lot of them lose fingers and toes, right? So pain is a blessing. There's a really good book called A Gift of the Gift of Pain,
Mm.
and it teaches us how pain is so important. Our lives would be awful if we didn't feel pain.
Mm.
Think of the times when you've just, maybe, you may be chopping vegetables, let's say, and you just start to push into your finger, but you manage to pull away.
Right.
If you didn't feel pain, that finger would have been chopped off, or at least that part of the finger,
Mm.
right? So, so pain is really, really important. Now, the problem with it is when that pain signal stays on after it's really required. So once the tissue is healed, if that pain signal is still going on, then that's when it's a problem.
Mm.
And it's like, have you heard of phantom pain?
Yeah.
So, for instance, if someone, for whatever reason, let's say their arm gets amputated from the elbow, but they still get hand pain in
Mm.
that arm, but the hand's not physically there, but they still get in pain. And it's a similar concept when someone has tissue damage, the tissue heals, but the pain signal is still going. So it's a bit like, imagine like if you're in your house at night and your house is on fire, you want the fire alarm to go off, right?
Right.
The fire alarm goes off, you get your family out, you wait outside the house, the fire service turn up, they put the fire out. You would hope the fire alarm would go off, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
But in this analogy, the fire alarm
Keeps
continues
going.
going, right?
Right.
Now, imagine living in a house with the fire alarms continually going off, right?
Mm.
Well, that's what it's like for people that are continually living in pain.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah,
you
go
could
on.
even rebuild your whole house and the fire alarm is still going off. You've got a completely new house, right? Because again, if you think about it, our tissues turn over, depending on who you listen to, every 2 to 7 years. So if you had pain 8 years ago and you've still got that pain now, think to yourself, why have I still got that pain? Because no cell in my body exists now that existed 8 years ago. That's
I
interesting,
see.
right?
That's really interesting. Yeah. It's like it's just stored in your
Yeah.
body, in your nervous system.
So I guess the next question is, why would it continue to send signals when tissues have healed?
Yeah.
You could say the answer is stress. So it could be emotional stress, it could be financial stress, it could be relationship stress, it could be childhood trauma. All those things could keep
Mm.
your system on a high alert
Right. 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 Right.
because it's trying to sense danger, right? That's what
Yeah.
pain is. It's trying to sense danger. It's trying to keep you safe.
Hmm.
But if your nervous system is ramped up through stress, then that's when the fire alarm could go off when it's not really needed. So
Hmm.
again, another analogy, if you can think back to the 80s, can you remember the 80s?
Not well. I mean, I still look at toys from the 80s. I've got this addiction to looking at Barbies from the 80s to try and get some like childhood memories.
But when I think back to the 80s, it's kind of when car alarms first started coming out.
Okay.
They were overly sensitive. So if you had a car alarm on your car and another car drove past your car that was parked on the road, your car alarm would go off. Not because someone's trying to steal your car, just another car's gone by. So it didn't need to go off, right? So when you've got an overly sensitive nervous system caused by stress, it's inputting into the nervous system the same system that detects pain. So it's
That's
creating that
fascinating.
oversensitivity.
So really something that is happening probably emotionally, it could be causing the physical pain to continue.
Yeah,
So really, when you take on a client, you've got to look at every part of who they are. You've got to look at their nutrition, their mental health, their physical health. You've got to look at the whole thing.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look over my shoulders, you'll see over
Yeah.
this shoulder, I've got the spine. On this shoulder, I've got the chakra system.
Yeah, because they're both very much
It's the
important.
east and it's the east and the west, right? So you're absolutely right. You've got to look at it from every angle. So I've done a bit of thinking in the last few years, as
Mm,
I'm sure a lot of people have.
just a bit.
And where I sit right now, and I say that because I'm always open to new information, is that any disease, any condition is caused by one of four aspects, and it can be a combination as well. So the first one is a structural misalignment,
Okay.
and if you speak to any chiropractor, they will agree.
Yeah.
It can be due to nutritional deficiency.
Hmm.
So again, we know about beriberi, scurvy, rickets, right? They're all nutritional deficiencies, but they were always thought to be caused by infection
Mm.
until they realized that they were malnutrition. Toxicity is another one,
Hmm.
and that could be physical toxicity, or it could be mental, or
Mm.
it could be electromagnetic,
Or nutritional again.
or nutritional,
Yeah.
right? Stress,
Hmm.
that can be psychological, that can also be physical, which comes back to the structural. Actually, there's five, isn't there? Because I've got another one. And then the final one is unresolved emotional trauma.
How do you
So,
deal? How do you, yeah, go on. You finish that.
so that I look at all of those areas.
How do you personally deal with someone who might have trauma that they haven't dealt with? Because I wouldn't guess that's in your wheelhouse. It is in your wheelhouse. Okay, okay.
Hmm.
You really do look at everything, don't you? That's great. So
So
that
I
must be
know,
the trickiest client for you, I can imagine, because it's tricky for them. If it's tricky for them, it's right.
yeah, not necessarily. I mean, I would say if someone has committed to working with me, if they've got to that point, because they do have to jump through quite a few hoops to get to that point. Um, I wouldn't suggest that for me they're going to be particularly tricky.
Okay.
So I use something called the emotion code,
Okay.
where I can at the energetic level find and release trapped emotions in people's bodies. And sometimes that's all that's needed to get rid of pain. And
Find
I've
the
had that.
trapped emotion. How do you find the trapped emotion?
So I am able to tap into someone's subconscious and ask their subconscious mind if they've got an emotion that is causing the particular condition that they're suffering from. And then what I do is if it says yes, I use this little chart here
Yeah. The emotion
to,
code chart. Yeah.
to identify which emotion their subconscious is prioritizing that they need to release at that point.
Hmm.
And it might be that I need to get more information. It might be that I need to know exactly when it happened, like how old they were, or did it happen when they were in the womb, or did it happen to one of their relatives before they were born? Was it absorbed from another person? What was the specific event that's associated with that emotion, and obviously where it's located in the body? And then I'm able to release that for them.
I love that. That's fascinating to me. That area of your work is the most fascinating to me
Well,
because it's so mysterious.
I now include the emotion code in all my coaching programs.
Mm, that's so great.
And so, you know, the guy that came up with the emotion code, he will probably suggest that, you know, in 99% of cases, even structural issues are actually caused by an emotional issue.
Wow. I mean, this kind of encapsulates what you do and how chronic pain is not just, oh, I've got a sore shoulder, I've got a sore back. Like, there's so much that's involved. So just to kind of tie this up,
Mm.
where can someone listening, where can they start? Because this seems like a big journey for someone. How do they start, and who can they trust to take them through this journey?
Okay, before I answer that,
Yeah.
I just want to quickly tell you a story of someone
Okay.
that had that kind of issue.
Okay.
So this was when I was finishing my Czech training. So when I was at the end of 5.5 years of training, the way that you're assessed is that they give you a client to work with, and you work with them for 4 days, and you're assessed in, you know, how well you can apply the Czech system. So I was working with this lady. I'm going to call her Karen. It's not her real name, but I don't have permission to tell her story. She was in her early 50s and she'd had 25 years of left-sided pain.
Mm.
So lower back, so she'd fallen and hit her left lower back. She'd fallen off a mountain bike, fallen on her hand, damaged her left shoulder and left neck. So she came to see me and I did my full physical assessment as I always do. But over the days I was, you know, teaching her how to eat and, you know, what time to go to bed and about good hydration, all that normal stuff. But in her questionnaires, it stated that, um, or obviously, all her pain was on her left side, which really stuck out to me. Because if you understand the chakra system, which is over my shoulder, um, the fifth chakra is in the neck, and that relates to the neck, the shoulder, and down the arm, which is where she had a lot of her symptoms. And
Mm.
if you've got a neck issue, that can cause a lower back issue, and potentially vice versa, but more likely neck will cause back. And also in Eastern philosophies, the left side of the body refers to female energy.
Okay.
So I didn't know whether I was, on the right track or anything. So I wanted to ask her a question because I'm thinking communication, left side of the body, female. So I'm thinking normally mother is the most likely. So I just said to her, what's your relationship like with your mother? And this like very kind of quietly spoken, timid, middle-aged woman just like when oh, don't talk to me about my mother. We've never got on. She never loved me. And I'm thinking, wow,
This stuff really works.
I've pinned the tail on the donkey here,
Yeah.
right? And so I spent a lot of time over these next 4 days teaching her another technique that we learned at the Chek Institute called nonviolent communication. And what I was coaching her to do was when she went back home, because she actually lived in Hawaii, was to reach out to her mother and try and re-establish that communication and really to tell her how she felt as a child and how she felt unloved and how she felt that her sister was the special one and she just didn't feel loved and she always felt like she got told off and all this kind of stuff. And so I came back to the UK and I've been back several months and I get a letter from Hawaii and I'm like, okay, I know who that's going to be from. And she basically said something along the lines of, can't thank you enough. Not only is my lower back, neck, shoulder pain gone, but I've got an amazing relationship with my mother. We see each other every day and we're getting on like a house on fire.
Oh, that makes me want to cry. I love that story.
Right. And I mean, I did give her exercises to do and I did get her to change her diet. In fact, because we spoke about diet a lot as well, she actually sent me some Hawaiian salt as well, because we'd obviously been talking about salt.
Mm.
So that's just one example of how, because that was really emotional trauma. She didn't feel loved as a child, but she couldn't communicate that to her mother, right? Because, again, as a child, you often do things that for that particular time, you do things to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And it might be just keeping quiet is the best thing to keep you safe. But the problem is that stays with you throughout the rest of your life if you don't know how to address it.
Mhm. Fascinating. Well, I do love that story. I've heard you tell it before. It's so lovely to hear. But this seems like someone really needs to find someone they can trust to take them through this process. So, what's the best advice you have for someone who might be interested to investigate their chronic pain?
Yeah, it's a good question. Um, I mean, the thing is, there's so many different ways that you can do it. Like, I'm not saying my way is the only way.
Mm.
And to be fair, there's not many people that have trained in the same things that I've trained in. And that's not to say that there aren't thousands of people around the world that can do just as good a job as I can. But I guess, if you feel you need help, if you need support, to find someone that's been recommended to you.
Mhm.
Um,
Do you think Czech practitioners, people should look for that qualification, or would you say even
yeah,
so, like go with personal recommendation?
yeah. I mean, Czech practitioner is definitely a good place to start. And the way we teach Czech practitioners is that there's 5 years of training. So some practitioners have done 1 year, some have done 2, some 3, some 4, and some 5 years. Um, and the way that we teach Czech practitioners is that get really good at what you know of what we've taught you, but also be aware that of the things that you don't know.
Mm.
And when you're aware of what you don't know, you can get a team of people around you to help you in those areas.
Right.
So, one of the reasons why I've studied so many different areas of health and wellness is because, when I started my Czech journey, I didn't do sports massage or any kind of hands-on work, so I would have to refer out for that. I suppose nutrition I've kind of always done. Um, but again, I studied functional medicine. If I wanted to have done that, I would have had to refer out for that. It just made it simpler for the client as much as for me if it could be as much of a one-stop shop as possible.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean I still don't refer out clients, because I do. I still refer out in certain areas. Like if someone's got vision issues, I generally send them to someone that does the Bates method, because I've found that works really, really well. If someone's got jaw issues, it might be a biological dentist or or I can't think of the name of the word now, but someone that does with the neurology of the jaw. I can't think of the name of it. Um, sometimes I've actually referred people to Paul Chek.
Hmm.
So, you've got to know where your limits are, but
Does he even take referrals? Like I can
I
imagine he
don't,
doesn't
I
have
don't know.
time.
I don't know if he does any more. I
Yeah,
don't know. I know
yeah.
he's pretty busy with everything else that's
Yeah.
going on. Um,
I
but
mean,
yeah,
would you is
it's a
check
difficult one.
there's check 1 to 4, right? Is check 1 to 4.
Five now, actually, it's
Check
five.
one to five. So it does is the higher the level, the better sort of thing, if someone wants to really get stuck in.
Yeah, so the higher in their Czech training, the more education they've received, basically. So in year one, someone that's year one, they they have a good base level of knowledge on how to realign the body, let's say, um, and how to teach people how to eat food that's right for them, and
Mm.
what time to go to bed and how much water they should drink, things like that. And then when they get to year three, that's when they study lumbar spine pathology. So
Okay.
if you've got a lower back issue, then we would recommend you'd probably need to see someone that's at least level three. And then in level four, um, if people have got like neck issues, shoulder issues, jaw issues, maybe things like headaches, that would be someone that needs to see someone from level three. Level
Level
five would
four.
be kind of your more complex
Mm.
clients, if you like, probably got structural, nutritional,
Yeah.
mental, emotional, spiritual issues
Spiritual.
all going on.
Yeah. That's
Um,
really good. It's good to know that anyone who's listening who hasn't heard of Czech and Paul Czech and his practitioners and I just love the whole philosophy. I love it. I love him and I love everything that the Czech Institute is about. I think it's really cool. So
that's how we met as well, wasn't it?
yeah, it is. I was on
At a
a
Czech workshop.
medicine ball course. I'll never forget. That was in Eastbourne. Mm.
I know it's the South Coast. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was 19. I'm
Wow.
40 now, so
Wow.
that was a long time ago.
Mm.
Yeah. Leigh, it's been so great chatting to you. How can people find you and what you do, and maybe even get your services? Are you online?
Yeah. So the best place to find me at the moment would be my website.
Mm.
As you know, I've had trouble with social media outlets, but that's a whole nother can of worms. Um, yeah. So my website is Body Chek. That's
Mhm.
BODYCHEK.co.uk. There are a couple of links to my social media on there. Whether they'll work or not, I don't know, because as you know, I'm having issues. I think I think these organisations don't like the truth getting out there, but
Right.
yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, that's the best place. And on there I've got my books, so I've written 5 books. Um, you can find my podcast on there, which is called Beyond the Pain.
Yeah.
Um, I've also in the pipeline, I've got an online course coming up as well, because I want to be able to provide education and support to people that maybe can't afford my one-to-one coaching. So that's going to be coming out in the new year. So there is an opportunity to sign up for that.
Okay. On your
But if you go to
website.
my yeah, if you
Okay.
go to my website, it will actually come up as a pop-up on the screen.
Okay.
There's a free gift that people can download, and then once they've got that free gift, I'll keep them updated onto the online courses.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks, Leigh. We've completed number 3, so I wonder
There we
if
go.
we'll actually get this through onto the pod. But thanks, Leigh. It was so great to chat to you.
My pleasure.